So, a very good evening, everyone, and it's a pleasure to welcome you all to this session. And we are excited to share valuable insights that could make a difference in your career journey. So, towards the end, we'll have an intricate Q&A session. So, keep your questions ready. You can add your questions at any point of time in the chat box, and our team will pick it up, and we'll try to cover all questions at the end. So, I'll be your host for the evening, and I'm thrilled to introduce our honored guest, Mr. Nitin Goplani, with over 7 years of experience in IT recruitment. Nitin currently serves as a talent partner at GFK, where he specializes in tech hiring. His journey includes working with renowned organizations like Microsoft and Capgemini, excelling in areas like employer branding, talent sourcing, and enhancing the candidate experience. We are honored to have you with us. Welcome, Nitin, to the session.
Thank you, Divya. Thank you so much. And welcome, everybody. And thanks for joining in the session. I would really like if some of you, if you can, turn on your cameras because apparently I cannot see anyone. And it's good to see people when you're interacting. But yes, if you can, if you're in a situation where you can turn on your cameras, that would be like lovely and great. Would be in more of an interactive session.
Absolutely. So, before we dive
Yeah.
into, yeah,
Yeah,
so
Divya, continue. You can.
yeah, okay. So before we dive into today's agenda, let me give you a brief about our sessions because many of you are joining this session for the first time. So at Uplers, our mission is to make hiring and getting hired reliable, simple, and fast. So we have had some amazing sessions around our Remote Revolution initiative, where we invited speakers from top-notch companies like Twilio, GitLab, Atlassian, and many more. You can check these recordings on our YouTube channel as part of our Remote Revolution initiative. We have hosted a lot of sessions till date, and now we are majorly focusing on um, top product-based companies. And so let's go ahead with today's agenda. If we can move to the next slide. Great. So, today we'll be talking about essential strategies for landing a tech job and acing in interviews. We'll cover actionable tips and tricks to boost your chances of success. And we'll cover about GFK as an organization and the culture, values, the interview process, and a lot of questions which you guys might be having. In the meanwhile, you can just add in the chat box. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome, Nitin. To kick off things, could you share a bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. I will definitely like to give my introduction to start with. So hi everyone. My name is Nitin, and I'm based in Gurgaon, basically Gurgaon, Delhi NCR. Have almost 7+ years of work experience in the talent recruitment that comes from variety of organizations that I got an exposure to work with in the past. It comes from a tech and non-tech background. So I started my journey from an agency background when I started like 7 years back. And the best part of working with agencies, you get to work with multiple companies and multiple industries like automotive, textile, manufacturing, operations, tech, BPOs. So you get a mixed variety of exposure. Then eventually I moved towards the corporate role, specialized more into tech recruitment. So I've been hiring a lot of developers, front engineers, software engineers, full stack, one stack, mean stack, and luckily, I've been blessed to work with some of those great companies where I got this most of my exposure to hire for a specialized needs stack of roles because they have dedicated products that is obviously being used by most of you and us on a broader scale. And towards these 7 years, what I've basically done, I've helped these companies, clients, and brands that I work with in hiring some of the great talent resources to meet out their human capital requirements. So every company has some human capital requirements, right? And every company desires to have right set of people, the team that they need to get the work done, just not to get the work done, but to do it more effectively and efficiently. That's what I basically specialize in, solving those problems. And yeah, I mean, that is a little bit about me. Apart from the work, I have a lot of hobbies. One is obviously having I like to dance a lot. I would not say a very great dancer, but yeah, something that I like to do apart from my working as a part of my hobbies. Um, Having cars, yeah, sort of those luckily boys kind of hobbies. But yeah, a little bit about me, and yeah, we can probably move to the next slide.
Great. Thank you so much, Nitin, for sharing your journey with us. Um, we are hoping to learn a lot from you. So, moving on, preparing for jobs and cracking interviews can feel like gearing up for a big match. You need the right strategy,
Absolutely.
practice, and confidence. From your experience, what's your game plan for candidates to ace their present preparation and deliver a winning performance in an interview? Can you share some tips which can work for all of us?
Yeah, absolutely. That's almost like a question for everybody who's a job aspiring individual, whether at a fresher level or experience level or an executive level, right? I also would have a lot of these questions 7 years back, or probably when I started, before every interview that I went through. And it's important to know the right set of tips and tricks that can help you to, have your profile boosted and get your chances of selection higher. So I do have 5 important points that I've tried to summarize, and some of the bullet points under each of the main points to help you covered and get started, and to make sure that you're checking every point when you start applying from the job till the time you clear the interview, and then post strategic alignment and interview feedback and follow up process. It's important that every step that you take, it looks like a planned step for you, and you make sure wherever you apply, it is in alignment with your role, your competencies, your skills. Because we see a lot of people applying to the jobs. When we post jobs, we receive a lot of applications, and it's an harshful truth. 80% are probably not relevant, because yeah, people either are not reading job descriptions, not knowing whether is it exactly matching to what you've been capable of doing, or is it matching to your skill set. And we at times think, why do we get rejections? It's because at times we forgot to check all these main points. So if we move to the next slide, I'll start with my first point. So suppose, for example, let's take it as a situation. If you are a job aspiring individual, and be it any job role that you are willing to apply, probably switching or starting with, you see a job posted on different platforms we have: LinkedIn, Naukri, Indeed, a lot of other platforms. So it's very important when you apply for the job, you read the job descriptions well, and then accordingly you create your power profile. Now, what I mean by power profile is very simple. As a recruiter, if I have to screen a CV, I probably would not give more than like 30-40 seconds initially, because the number of application inflow that we receive is quite huge. So when we post jobs, it goes to different platforms. And you might be thinking, oh, recruiter is not seeing. But as an individual, when we're doing from a human capacity, it's very hard to even look at resume for more than a minute when you have like 400, 500,000 applications. So we would just look for some of the key aspects. So when you look out the CV, it's important that you highlight your key achievements. Even if you're a fresher, you're an experienced individual, it's important what your USP is, what you're capable of doing. So you have a section called profile summary in your CV. Some of you would have, some of you would not have, but try to include that important section, because that should be the first section of your CV. And it should give you some 4 or 5 bullet points about what you're capable of doing, what your highlights, achievements are, whether in school, colleges, projects, companies, wherever you work with. It's important that you put them very clear in a structured format. Do not put a lot of sentences, just try to put some key bullet points. And it's important when you put a number, because when you see a CV, when you see from a naked human eye, it's very important that you see some sort of numbers in the CV, right? For example, if you've delivered 10 plus projects, right? If you would write TEN and just put 10 plus, as an individual, you would definitely look for 10 plus first, rather than something written in like sentences. So 10 plus project delivered, whatever projects you have delivered, whatever impacts that you've put in your company, in your multiple companies, or even as a fresher when you delivered some projects in your campus. Try to put those quantifiable achievements. Try to put it in a clear and concise and structured manner, so that if I am just seeing a CV, or be it any recruiter, you will just get engaged with it, and then you start reading more. So if the first profile section is not that much of interactive, I would probably like to skip the CV, right? I would not spend more of my time, and I have some important skill set given in my job description. I'm able to see it right away in front of my eyes. That probably checks mark for me. So important points are basically you highlight your key achievements, try to put in your profile summary section, your notable and key existing projects which probably would be more relevant to the job that you're applying for. If it is related, try to put it. If it is not, then probably some other projects that you have done, and try to put as many numbers that you can, be it any section of your resume, like when you're even giving some summary of wherever you worked, what all responsibilities you had, to try to put your deliverables, your achievements, or what you delivered in that particular role or profile. So that's first step, that you make your power profile. It's important when you put these things, because obviously when your profile would go through an ATS, I'm not sure how many of you are aware of ATS. Can anybody tell me what is the full form of ATS, if you have heard of it ever before? Guys, maybe yes, no. Even if you don't know, that's completely fine. I can tell you. But any one of you have heard what is ATS? You see, you may be saying ATS friendly resume, ATS friendly profile. Yeah, somebody has wrote applicant. Yeah, it's an application tracking system, an applicant tracking system. It's important because we as a company, our profile, I mean, a job get posted to multiple sources, and it's like a it's like a guard for us who would screen profiles for us automatically on an automated mode, and just send us the profiles which are relevant, which has a relevant matching score. For example, if you have like a profile here, and there's a like guard which work like an ATS, right? So you would see if you have all the important keywords, descriptions, everything which is matching to the job description, it will create your relevance score, a quality matching score or profile matching score. So if I have like 1,000 applications, what I will do, I'll just put a filter. I need the matching score of 80% and above. It will automatically filter 80% of the applications for me and just give me those 20% of the applications which have a relevant score of 80% and above. And that happens across everywhere. So that is why it is important that you craft your CV or resume in a right format, that it bypass the ATS. And in this today's time, I don't think so it's a major challenge which we also face, because you have a lot of chat GPT and AI tools. So you put a job description, you get your keywords done. But it's very important that you just don't put whatever is given to you by AI tool. You have to do a little bit of your adjustment. You have to put a little bit of creativity, because yeah, that what it matters, and give you high relevance score, high matching score, that will bypass the ATS for you. So moving on to the next slide, the second point of the slide, which is, once you have your CV shortlisted, first point checked in. And if it is not, then you have to probably look around as to how many app profiles that you applied for, how many got shortlisted. If you're not getting more shortlisted, then probably something is wrong in your CV. Like you need to redo things, you need to relook at it and make those adjusting changes. And that happens for every job that you apply. It cannot be like one CV for every job that you apply, unless the role is pretty much similar that you're applying for. The second step is basically, how do you prepare? What is the framework? What analysis, what little research that you should do before you get an HR screening call? So, for example, if you apply for, let's say, my company, and IQ and GFK, we'll tell you more about what we basically do in the future in some minutes. So you need to go to the company website, and it just take hardly a minute or two, to be honest, when you apply for any job. It's important to understand what company have done in the past. What are they basically doing? What industry are they serving? Like, you need to have a little bit of industry analysis. It's also important from your perspective that you're going in the right industry. For example, software engineer or developer can be in any industries. It could be a marketing industry, networking, technology, operations. Every company needs an tech setup. But it's also important that you're being in an industry which have a higher scope, which have more progressive growth in the future. So always look into the company values, go to the about description, probably look for recent news trends that company has achieved, probably launched, collaborated, acquired, any sort of recent news would give you a little bit of more understanding what this company is all about. And more than that, it will give you an understanding whether this is something that you want to take it forward or not. Because if from the beginning, if you're clear that this is the company which looks a little good to me, the stats looking good, analysis looking good, financials looking good, looking at the company size, if everything checks mark for you, then only you should move ahead, because it's not about just landing a job. It's more about landing the right job where you can stay in an organization, look for more progressive growth, look for more senior roles, in terms of hierarchy that you should grow. So it's very important that you do this little bit of analysis before you get an HR screening call, because the first question I would probably, or any recruiter would ask, do you know anything about the company? Now, this is more probably a make or break question. We will give you more understanding even if you say, okay, we don't know, but it will just give us a little bit of red flag, because it seems like you're just applying for the jobs. You're not screening or analyzing whether you should or you have applied before looking at the company. So it's important that you should give a little bit of understanding to the HR when they ask you about, do you know anything about the company? You said, yes, not more, but I've done a little research. This is what I got to know. So it will definitely give you a, green flag at the first step, and an impression, obviously. So all these things matters a lot. So you should always look up all these things before you get an HR screening call. So let's, any questions before, like, Divya, are we taking questions right away or like probably in the last?
We can pick it up at the last.
Okay, perfect. But yes, you can save your questions if you have probably your experience in the past where you have asked for a question and you do not get an answer for. I know we have a bad reputation in the market. We don't exactly give you a lot of feedback. It's quite hard and important. But then we try to give as much as I can rather than the automated response that you get from ATS. But yeah, okay, let's move to the third slide and the third important point, which is what an interview success blueprint. Now, as per from my observation, what I've seen, and this is just not restricted to freshers. It is related to people coming from every experience band. When you get into that interview, it's basically your do or die call, right? If that is more important for you. So it is important that you do your homework well, that whatever questions might be asked to you in an interview, you delivered with utmost grace, structured response, and you have a definite answers to it. So first an important point, whenever an interview it starts, obviously they'll give you a little bit of understanding who you're interacting with, a little bit about the company, a general introduction that is done. But when it comes to asking about you, this introduction makes a lot of difference. Now, I've seen literally people with 10 years, 11, 12, 8 plus years experience giving a very straightforward introduction. Like, you know, in a general in society, we've been told you start with, my name is this, I come from this background, started my career with this company, did this, did that. And probably some of the people start with the thanking note in the first, thank you for giving me this opportunity. But trust me, if you're interviewing 10 people and everybody is giving you straight, structured format responses, do you think you're making an impression? Like 10 people starting with same exact introduction, just the, it's like the script of the movie is same, you're just changing the characters, right? So it doesn't make you engage. But somebody, let's say 11th candidate comes in and gives you a little bit of creative introduction, who feels little enthusiasm about telling about his or her story throughout his journey, you would definitely be engaged and looking forward to hear more from that candidate rather than giving you a structured response. So I have this framework that I've created. It's not like something that I was doing in a free time to give you understanding how to structure introduction. So I call it beast, BEAST, and the B stands for your background. So when you're starting an interview, you should start with a little bit about your background, right? Where you have come from, where you're putting up, right? So your little bit of background, the profile summary. For example, if you're appearing for a data enthusiast role, so you should always tell you about, like, my name is Nitin. I've always been a problem solver. From the very get-go, from my schooling, from my campus, I was always looking for the innovative solutions to the problems that we have commonly available. So it just gives you a little bit more background and touch about your journey. Then you can mention about E, which stands for experience, right? What is your experience? Even if you do not have an experience, you're a fresher, you can tell about the projects that you've done in your campus, your college, your school times. But even an experienced individual, do mention your experiences that you've had. So, for example, if I start, like, I have an experience with 7 years, I work with Capgemini. So don't end up there, because it's more of an open thing. So you said I worked for 1.5 years with that company. Couple of learnings that I had from this company. I learned how to work with cross-functional team, work with tight deliveries, a lot of other things that you have learned. Try to gather that learning and put it into your points. So you just not tell about your experience that you worked these many years, but also try to include some of the learnings that you got from that experience. I mean, working with that company. It's given a little bit more understanding, a broader insight about who you are as an individual, right? So you mention your experiences. Then A stands for your achievements. You can also say, some of the achievements after this 5 years of working that I've got. And just an example, this is so I'm able to do this. I'm able to deliver these many results with the strict timelines. I have been able to, achieve these things where I was working with this team. Though I was a junior resource, but I was able to meet my KPIs well before time. So you mention your achievements right in there. Rather than just framing different stories, you try to structure your responses. So you start with your background, when you come to your experience, then achievement. Then also mention the S part, which is the skills. What all skills do you have? And here, what I would like to tell you, mention all the relevant skills which are matching to the job profile you're applying for, because that will just immediately gives me a red flag. I mean, the green flag for me, basically. Okay, these are the skills that you have, even though some of them were not in your CVs, but you have these skills. For example, if there are any skills that you're learning, in fact, so just tell that, for example, if you're learning Angular or React, right? Though you do not have a project exposure, but this is something that you're learning in your part time because you want to work towards it. And then the last part, which is the T, I would what I would like to structure, you put your thanking note in the last rather than putting it in the beginning. Instead, thank you for giving this opportunity and giving me an exposure, a chance probably appear for this interview. So you start with your background, you put your experiences, achievements, skills, and then a thanking note. Probably you have to do a little bit of creativity. Try to structure your introduction, write it in your paper, and try to deliver it with an enthusiasm. So it should look like a story, right? So the person who is hearing your introduction should feel a little bit of, fire, right? This guy comes with an experience. He has the ability to deliver, right? He has enthusiasm to bring towards the table. Rather than you give a boring, same format introduction. Trust me, even a smaller way of your creativity does make a lot of impression. And it also tells you more about your communication, kind of a thought process you have, kind of personality you have. Not everything is boiled down towards the technical stack, because what I feel, you know um I mean, aptitude is something that we can obviously train. If you don't know something, we can train you, but attitude is something that you carry, that you make towards the different experience, probably your short journey. So it matters a lot. When you start with a good introduction, impressive introduction does set the very first impression pretty much straightforward for you. Then whenever whatever questions has been asked to you, what we have seen majorly, the people doesn't give structured responses. Like, if they know something, right, we expect you to tell us in detail. It should not be more details, it should not be less details, it should be adequate details. For example, if a technical or operational question is being asked, like what is your role, how did you handle that situation, all those things. So it is very important that you take an approach where you structure your responses. So I'm sure you would have heard of this method called STAR, right? Situation, task, action, result. There are other methods as well, which is probably PAR, SOAR. But I think one method that I personally feel is more relevant is the POWER method, right? So whatever question is asked to you, you tell us about the problem that you had, which stands for P. Then what was the action that you have taken? And then what is the end result of those actions that you have taken, whether you were successful, whether you were not successful. Even if you were not successful of something in terms of the actions that you have taken, it's important that you take some important learnings and then you implement those learnings. And the next time when you try for it, to solve that same problem, you get successful, right? So it's important whatever question is asked to you, because see, for every interview that you would appear, it's important that they would put you in some situational questions, right? It's a very limited time frame for us to judge or to check whether this person would be able to deliver what we expect out of this job, right? So what we basically do, we try to put in situational questions. First thing that we're checking is how you think, how your thought process work. So when you're giving a time bound response, when we give you a time bound delivery, it's important that you have a creative thought process. You are not exactly thinking for a problem that others might be able to think. For certain roles, these are the requirements to understand and to have a creative mindset in the team. And whenever a question is asked to you, it's important that you take some time to rethink about the question rather than immediately start answering it, right? It's completely fine. Nowhere in the world would not give you that 1 minute if you want to have it. Like you can just simply ask the interviewer, "Oh, can I have a minute to think about this question?" And would that be fine with you? Everybody would say, yes, you can take that minute. What you would do in this 1 minute, you would think about the question twice, like what is exactly asked, what is the intention of this question? Because a lot of time you think it's a direct question, that probably it is asking more deepful thing. So understand what is the perspective behind that question that is thrown towards you, and then try to frame your response in a structured format. Like think about the creative way that you can give those answers, whether it is asking about a situation what you have done, whether it is asking about a challenging situation that you have undertaken or you have handled in your previous organization or wherever project that you have worked with. So once you give that structured response, you tell the problem, this was the problem, it was a new problem, this was an action, this was the solution that you have implemented, and these were the end results. Even though you were not successful, these were couple of learnings that you understood, and when you applied to a next project, these you became successful, right? So it's important that you give structured responses for every sort of question rather than framing lot of stories, because a our time is also limited, so is yours. So you have to just make sure that you use this time effectively and efficiently. And if you don't know anything, try not to put it in your CV, because if a question is asked from that topic, it doesn't give you a good impression. So it's important that you only put those things that you know and you're capable of doing, and something which you don't know, you can always ensure that these are things that you have not got an exposure to work in your previous organization, but this is something that you really look forward to if given a chance in the future. So at least it just shows that you have a learning attitude, you have a learning approach towards things that you don't know probably, and that reflects a lot of about your personality. Because see, 80% if it is technical, 20 to 30% still relevance to what sort of personality, what sort of individual are you. And these hiring decisions are irreversible decisions for us. We implement a lot of cost, resources, time. So we need to make sure through multiple stages of interview that you undergo is that for every stage, our confidence on having this candidate should increase. If after every stage the confidence is decreasing, you probably won't get selected. So you also need to be sound promising in terms of whatever you're telling, whatever you're delivering, whatever you're promising. You should be able to deliver that, and you can only deliver it if you know, if you have done those things before in the past. So that is more important, that you start with a good introduction, impressive. You probably can take a piece of paper and start writing the more creative ways how you can introduce yourself. Think about more structured way. You probably use this framework that I've told you and see if does make a difference or not. And then whatever question that is being asked to you, try to give you a structured response for every question that is asked. And a lot of individuals, what I feel is fail to build a rapport. It's an interview. If you think from a broader perspective, it is just a conversation between two people or three people, let's say. More number of interviews are there, but it is just happening on a formal level. So you should also be building a little rapport with the interviewers, just asking about, make it like a flow of a conversation rather than always they asking questions and you give response. Try to make it like a conversation so that it should automatically flow and smooth, so that once even when you're out of the interview, feel good about it, and so does the interviewer as well. So try to build that rapport. It ensures and it tells a lot about your personality, to be honest. So moving on to the next slide, the fourth point. Okay, perfect. So some of the red flags, and it's important that you know what are the red flags. There are a lot of, but I've tried to put in which I probably see on a daily basis. First is obviously avoid bad mouthing. We in interviewers or the technical panel does ask, why did you leave? Why did you leave the last organization? What was your experience? So a lot of people does give a negative impression. There's nothing bad about it. You might probably have faced that situation that you would not be in a good situation in your last company or with your last employer, but it just does not reflects a lot of positivity when you say negative things about the companies or the employers that you worked with in the past. So you can always, I mean, try to give the positive points about it rather than giving the negative points. Or either when you're saying, there were a lot of good things about the last company or the last profile, but there were some of the bad things which I probably would not like to mention unless it's being specifically asked to you, unless you were going to some really toxic culture, then you should talk about it. But it should be probably like one or two companies. If you work with three or four companies, should not be the case. Because if you would keep on saying like for all the three or four companies that you work with, you were not happy, then ultimately please remember it was a decision made by you, right? Nobody else. Once you take a decision about yourself, you need to make sure that you're taking the right decision. So when you're questioning or telling a negative, you're probably is questioning your decision of joining that company in the first place. So think about from that perspective. Second is lack of enthusiasm and energy. Like I've told you in the previous slide as well, a lot of people really lacks the enthusiasm and energy. You see a lot of, I think you would meet people in general life as well, and you see some people does reflects a lot of positive energy, right? When you talk with them, it's important that you also reflects a positive energy from yourself rather than lacking the enthusiasm. There's always a boost of confidence that should reflect when you say about anything in an interview, right? So try to be more positive, try to be more confident, try to be energetic whatever you answer. It does bring a lot of positivity within that time frame of interview that you are like 30, 40, 60 minutes, whatever you are. And the people who are taking interview would also take that positive energy but positive confidence rather than just being dull about it, like just asking questions and just giving straightforward answers. That should not how it works, to be honest. And the third and more important point, do not create an ambiguity in any response that you give, any answers that you give. So when you give an ambiguous answers, it just it just puts a lot of self-doubt. I don't know about you, but then gives a lot of doubts to about interviewers that whether this person would be able to deliver, whether what he or she is claiming on the CV is able to deliver or have done this before. So try to be more structured, clear, and confident about your responses that you give, rather than just being ambiguous about those situation altogether. So these are three important points that you should avoid. Obviously, there are other red flags as well, but some of those important points I would like to put into this PPT. So these are some observations that I felt generally people do, and it does put a lot of bad impact on your profile. Probably are red flags when you go for an interview. So try to avoid those and try to be more positive and yeah, clear about whatever you want to do or your decision that you're making. Cool. So let's move to the next slide, which is the fifth slide. This is also a very important point. Once you have given the interview, what all things that you should do? A lot of people do over follow-ups, but I feel like 80 to 90% of the time when you have a good or a positive interview that you've given, you just know that you're going to clear this, or you're going to hear a positive feedback coming from an HR, or the technical panel would have given a positive feedback to you that would be communicated to you. But still there are 10-15% of times where you are not confident, or you're totally in ambiguous situation whether it would be a positive feedback or not. So you should only do an adequate follow up. It should not look like you're just constantly following about the feedback, because obviously there are other interviews also planned. So a lot of time interviewers want to, or the technical panel wants to interview everybody before they make a decision to select and with whom to do want to go forward, right? So it would never happen that, unless it's a very critical job role that we need to close it like quickly. Otherwise, usually people like or technical panels would like to interview, if there are five people in the pipeline, they would like to interview all those five and then take a conclusive decision or inclusive decision after interacting in agreement with everybody they want to have in the hiring panel. So be consistent and be patient. Being patient is very much important at this time frame. So you should always express the continued interest. You can always drop a follow-up email, just delivering your experience about the interview. Even if it is positive, or I would even say if it is negative, if you think there's something that did not go well, because a lot of times we and HRs are not able to join the interviews. It's just the technical panel also just takes the interview. So a lot of times, if there are some biasness or errors, unless you tell us, we would not be able to, understand. And a lot of things also start with how you build your rapport with the HR right from the first screening call. So if you're building a right rapport, then HR, at least we people at least know that you're good. We were good with communication. So if hiring manager is coming, we did not find the communication well, then we would double question the hiring manager probably because we did not feel that during our conversation with the candidate. So whether it's a positive, negative, I mean, try to put it as more positive to be honest, and just put how was your experience. Do you felt well? What was the points that you, so you mention all those things in a follow-up email and you drop it that you're just showing as a continued form of interest towards this job role. If you have any pending questions, because a lot of times you forget to ask the relevant questions when given a chance to you in an interview. If you have any questions, so you, at times this might can happen that a human tendency error that you do not ask those questions, you forget to address those questions. You can drop up an email asking about the pending questions. It just shows that you're keen towards the role, you're keen towards the technicalities of the role. So probably your working hours, what what shifts you would be working with, what stakeholders you would be working with, what is the mode of working, all those things. If you have not got those answers in your first call or probably in the interview calls, but it is important for you as well that you make a right decision. And the only way to make a right decision is to have the complete information. So if you're making a decision without having a complete information later on when you join the company and say, "Oh, I'm not okay, I'm not happy with this," so somewhere down the line it is your fault as well, and companies. But a lot of times we give the room for you to ask the relevant questions if you have any specific concerns related to the role. So try to gather those points. If you forget to get it answered in the interview, try to put it in an email and just shoot. So you'll probably go get those questions. And yeah, if you have a specific point of interest, this comes from a variety of different, like if you want to know about specific technologies, tag, the functional working. So a lot of people, because we hire a lot of technical people, they give us the specific point of interest. We want to understand how you do that, how you do that. So in those scenarios, we set up engagement calls with the hiring managers, or we just raise these points to the hiring managers, and they try to cover it in the final round of final stages of interview. So that's pretty much more important, that you do a right follow up and you be patient within that time frame. You don't do over follow-ups because it would just put a bad impression. That allows sometimes, because if you're selected, company will definitely get back to you. So just dropping one or two follow-ups still makes sense, but something more than two follow-ups doesn't really make sense unless you've been specifically asked to wait or your profile has been put on hold, except those scenarios. Yeah. So
Great.
yeah, these were the 5 points that I thought to cover in from the experience or from the interviews that we have taken so far these many years, so that what is basically being checked in an interview, what is our perspective when we interview people or the hiring managers interview people.
Great.
So
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing these insights. And now, as you mentioned in one of the slides about knowing about the organization, it's
correct.
important. So, would request you to share something about GFK as an organization and what all culture and values you guys follow.
Absolutely, I would love to tell you about those things. So I'm sure you guys would have been a little confused to see two different brands in IQ GFK. I was personally hired by GFK when I left Microsoft. I joined this company in 2022. So GFK started with an institution. This is almost 90 years old organization. Started with an institution to give knowledge, and it's a Germany-based company. So we are headquartered in Germany. What we basically do, we tap the consumer insights and consumer behavior of buying things. We work with brands like Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Apple, Philips, Samsung, LG. All these brands have one thing in common. We are a product-based company and we work mostly with product-based company rather than service-based. So these have multiple products, right? And these brand constantly needs to know how their products are being perceived in the market. So it could be a global product, it could be a local product. For example, we work with Apple. So iPhone is a global product. It is available in every region, country, location, right? And they constantly needs to know how their product is performing. Is the sales going upwards? If it is going downwards, what are the probable reasons? So we gather that data. So we have a lot of AI based tools which capture this information. How do we track this? It is quite interesting to know. So for example, in India, let's pick an example. If you're buying a phone, either you would go to offline channel like big stores, not about the small shops, but big store like Reliance, Chroma, Vijay Sales, all these, bigger multi-branded stores, or either you go to platform like Amazon, Flipkart, wherever these phones are available. So that transaction is being recorded. Okay, A user bought this phone in Ahmedabad location, age bracket of the consumer, mode of payment, color of the phone. We also get a little bit of insights about income. So all these raw parameters are captured and then get processed in a meaningful future forwardable insights that goes to the brand. Now, why do brands need this information? They need to make some critical decision whether to come up with a new product only if the past product is successful or either if it is not successful. If there's any more features that they would like to add in the current product. So we gather those survey and insights. We give them, okay, probably users would feel if Type C would be given an iPhone. So all these decisions are not just taken by the company. These are generally the feedback that is coming from the market, and then they just try to implement it if they can. If something is not performing in the market, they want to take the product off the market. Now, they would not just directly tomorrow go and take that decision. They need some data that is backed up. That decision should be backed up by some relevant data. So we are present in more than 100 plus countries across the globe, and this data is coming from different locations depending on whatever brand wants to get the data of respective geography. So this is what we do. We have multiple products. So we work with advanced analytics, consumer insights, consumer buying patterns. We also tell you some of interesting studies that we do. You watch a lot of Netflix, Prime, YouTube, right? This is also called media measurement. Now, advertisers needs to know what people are watching, where they're watching, on what platform they're watching, tablet, phone, TV. All this data is also captured. So how do we do it? Um, for example, if some new product is being launched or an ad has to be framed, let's in Ahmedabad location, let's in Pune location. So we pick some sample size of people. We pay them, obviously, and then some smart devices are being installed in their phone, watches, TV, and they just have to watch things throughout the day or whatever they watch, the time of engaging, the engagement that they're doing. For example, if they're watching a show, how long did they watch? What is the watch time? All this data is being tracked by those devices. That data is captured, gets processed, and then give it to the advertisers. So the advertisers are constantly knowing what people are watching. How long would they watch? Would this ad be successful? Would make a lot of impact. So all these things, exciting things that we do, we predict the future for them, and we give those insights so that they can make some value informed decisions about their brand. So yeah, I think we have a second slide, another slide as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, some of the core values, culture that we try to inculcate in every individual that we take, right? So even when we're interviewing people, we look for these important core values and culture. I mean, every company would have some culture rounds. If not specific culture rounds, then apart from the technical, your cultural fitment is always being checked throughout the interviews. So whether you are somebody who is client obsessed, you put your client before you, whatever strategy decision that you're making isn't respective, is in alignment or sync with clients, whether this will bring a fruitful result for the client. So we try to look at all these things. So first is obviously client obsession. We try to be delivering what client has been asking. We think from client perspective, like getting into their shoes and think what would be a profitable situation, what would be a fruitful result for them. Then second is obviously we're driven to win. um, it's not always that whatever you do, whatever you plan will always be successful, but at least you would be adaptable, you would be agile in doing things. So the market is very dynamic, and the only way that you're able to adapt to that market is you're passionate about what you're doing. So whenever we're interviewing people, we also look for this, whether you're passionate about what you've been doing, whether that passion reflects in your answers, whether that passion reflects in your personality. So these are some things that we also look for. So driven to win is a very important thing. And you would have a lot of situations where you would be given a chance to lead. And all these inequalities or these values, if you keep on reflecting, that does make you a successful person in an organization. You would get appraisals, you would get promoted on time. So it's important that you just not inculcate or show these value when you're being hired, but also when you get hired, and you constantly show all these qualities and values. A third is obviously accountable for results. Whatever we do as a team as well, we try not to put, if something goes wrong, we not try not to put on each other. We take complete accountabilities of every action that we have taken. If something goes wrong, that was a team's mistake, not somebody's mistake. If you're successful, that was a teamwork, right? So, and again, we don't really like to work in silos, although the setup is quite mixed at the moment, which is hybrid. Some of the people are still working remote, but we try to be with each other whenever we have opportunities, even if it is a global meet as well, at least once in a year. So we try to be, working as a team. We try to have that bond other than the work, because somewhere in your personal understanding, that does make a lot of impact on your professional understanding as well. And having those relationship with your manager, with your immediate colleagues, is very very important, because that just ensure you, that just give you safety that you want to stick with this organization. You would like to be with this organization for a longer period of time. So not everything boils down to compensation, or lot of other factors which give you that sense of trust, safety within the organization. And obviously committed to integrity. Integrity is something that would be a value for most of the organization that you would see in the market. So it's important that whatever you do and whatever you, how you behave, that you should give respect to everybody, whether it's a junior resource, whether it's a senior resource. They should always be open towards the feedback if it is coming, right, even from a junior resource. So we try to implement, we have a lot of programs internally, where if you have any idea, where you have any suggestions, you can always give. And that should always be according to backed up plan, that if you're giving this idea, this should be the plan that you should implement to do that or execute that idea. If it looks good, then there are a lot of cases where we have seen the ideas that are coming from even junior resources have been implemented on a global level. So, and that reflects a lot of achievement for you, and you could put in your CV. And then that credit is also given the newsletters that we extend within the organization, outside the organization. So yeah, these are a couple of values, the four important values that we try to inculcate when we work towards our organization. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing this. So let's move to this slide, which talks about the interview process. So over to you, Nitin.
Yeah. So not a very difficult process, pretty much probably the same with other companies. So obviously the first step is HR screening. HR screening is once your profile is shortlisted, and HR screening is the first call when I would probably interact with you, understand whatever you have promised on your CV, do you have that or not? So checking on a lot of main checkpoints: experience level, location, comfortable with shifts, working hours, professional knowledge, project knowledge. All these things are being checked. If it looks good to go, then we immediately initiate one tech assessment. So we're already partnering with Uplers. We're still using Uplers assessment tools as well. I'm not sure if you guys have seen it, but you should definitely look for it. And we have some internal tools as well, through which we check your technical knowledge. And these are hardcore technical knowledge, right? So you would be given a situation or task related to the technical stack, and you will just have to solve that task. Higher score would definitely ensure your selection. So if you're able to hire score like 80% above, whatever is the minimum score, right? So we would move towards the first round of interview, which is a purely technical round of interview. Usually take it for 60 minutes. And then if you're able to pass that, you go to the final round of interview, which is of 90 minutes, depending to the role, where your technical and your cultural fitment both are being checked. And some of these roles, which are like higher level roles, T7 and above, we do have the level 3 of screening, which are usually taken by the leads, the director level leads. Those sort of people would also be part of the interview process. So depending on your grade level, but generally L1 and L2, and then HR screening and tech assessment. Yeah.
Okay, so we can move to the next slide. Okay, so the slides talk about the job opportunities active in the career page of GFK. So you guys can just explore it, and I think we can just skip this and go to the Q&A because
Yeah.
we're running out of time. So, great. Thank you so much for sharing these insights. And now let's open the floor for Q&A. So, guys, you can just type in your questions. There are already some questions, so I'll start with one. So, what should be our response in case if we are not aware of a particular question? Maybe I might have answered 6 questions out of 10. If I don't know answers of remaining four, how like can I cleverly manage the situation instead of blank face or answering I'm not aware of it?
So that's a great question. There would be, for example, if there are 10 questions asked, you answered six of them. So I'm sure those four would not be completely out of context. There would be some understanding you would have it. Like if you're able to answer 60% of it, probably for the remaining four, not exactly 100%, but 20% you would be aware of it. But you should not portray or try to be that you know about things. You can just honestly convey in those factors that you know a little bit about of it, probably have heard of it, a little project that you do, or just partnered with colleagues and got to know about these things, but you have not have a hands-on knowledge of these four questions. Like for example, if it is a particular stack that is being asked or particular situation, and just be honest about it because that's the only way around. If you even fake in that point of time, okay, you know, and you think probably you can learn it, but trust me, there are few things which you can only learn and do when you have a hands-on knowledge. Even some of the courses that you do, they give you projects, but the projects that you do actually in a company, that is pretty much different. So it's rather being honest about it. If you know a little bit context of it, just ensure the learning attitude and show that you're very much willing to learn about these things if given a chance. And probably you can tell your action plan, like probably, for example, if there are particular stack or understanding that you're not aware of, but in the part time, if you're learning of it, just explain them that in the part time, in the meantime, you're trying to learn all these things. However, if you give a chance and coming to the organization, if I give that particular chance, I would definitely be able to deliver. And for those 6 questions, if you have answered it well, trust me, they would not doubt about it that if you don't know 4 questions, they will just clearly reject, unless those are very, very important. So I'm assuming those 4 questions would not be completely out of context, but at least 10-20% you would be aware of it. They would definitely give you a chance because you have answered majority of the questions. Hope that answers. But if there's anything, Nayan, if you want to ask specifically, you can just ask again. Like you want to put a situation where you face this.
Great, thanks. So we have another question. What is the best approach to answer when recruiter ask expected salary before taking interview?
Sorry, can you come again?
Yeah. What is the best approach to answer when recruiter ask expected salary before taking an interview? Because sometimes
Mm-hmm.
we say something which there are chances that we are underpaid and we put ourselves at that place. So I guess he's trying to
That case, you should always do a little bit benchmarking what other people with that required experience level are getting paid. And I'm sure there are a lot of other platforms where you can get this knowledge. But I would rather tell you that you impress them, like at that point of time you give a relevant expectation rather than not put an unrealistic expectation. Like I know if you're coming from a tech background, your answers or hike percentage could be slightly higher than 50-60%, and at times we are even giving 70, 80, 100% as well. But those are limited to very, very niche stack. So that depends on what stack you're asking these expectations. Suppose if you're trained on a very niche stack, and if people are getting 60-70% easily, then you should quote it. And you should quote it. Why? Because you can always give a reference. The other people who are getting or working on this required stack, like AI and ML stack, those guys are getting paid. But if you're coming with a general stack of .NET, let's say, or Node React, then try to put a realistic approach. Also look for the specifications of the job description because not every job is similar. But if it is required that you need to work on specific technology set and you know this is rare and this is rare, then you can quote higher expectation. But at that point of time, try to give a realistic expectations. Once you have impressed them in the first round of interview, let your words do the talking, let your work should talk about yourself. Then hiring manager won't have a challenge to even if you ask for more at that point of time because you have proved something. But rather than getting proved and you ask for unrealistically, you might not even get a chance to go for the first round of interview. So yeah, that's more important.
Okay, thanks for answering that. So we have another question. Is it negative? does it create negative impact if we put multiple switched in career?
It does, but it depends on how you tackle that. It is completely a pure play of your words and the situation that you've been in. So if you're just constantly changing, your reasons to change should be satisfying, right? It should not look to me that you're just making an excuse, right? So I let me take you for just take me my example rather than taking anybody's else. So in the last two companies I switched early. I tell you why. When I was in Capgemini, I was working specifically for Microsoft Stack. Like there was a BI stack, BI intelligence stack, where you have specific business intelligence and developers, all the .NET stack. Then I was directly approached by the client, which is Microsoft, right? So there was a valid chance if I was working with Capgemini, I was being approached by Microsoft. Why would I say no? And then when I switched Microsoft, there was at this point of time when tech market wasn't that good. So I had a valid reasons. But if you're changing unexpectedly and it would just appear that you're changing just for the sake of your compensation, trust me, in a shorter run, you might be able to score, you might be able to get higher CTC. But in the longer run, you would face that challenge because generally it is not the expectation range. So if you're getting highly paid or you're switching career just for the compensation, you might not even go for your higher positions because there people would just look for stability because once you get to that level, you have a lot of business information that we cannot risk to have people who would just switch within 3 or 6 months. We need resource with the stability here. But if you have a valid questions, if you have valid reasons to switch, that does make sense. So it is important that how you describe your change and it should not appear for a pure reason of compensation because that would just make you look like you're just hungry for a compensation and there's nothing other than compensation that you look for when you apply for a job. That's like a biggest red flag for me and I'm sure for other recruiters as well.
Okay, so we have another question. How to face a case study type interview in best possible way? What is expected from case study interview and how is it structured?
Best ways to take this power method: problem, you understand the problem statement, be it clear with it, and then it is more important that you understand the problem well in the context which is being asked. Then what is your action plan? When you approach a case study, it is important that you give a realistic case study. For example, if you're suggesting any action plan, what should be the pros and cons of that action plan that should be able to understand both. So when you're delivering that case study, it is important. For example, there was this recent case study that I was given. We were doing some project and we want to implement some new campus recruitment studies. So what I did is what you also can do. I created a survey and I rotated it to like within my network, the people who are like freshers, and asked them like what challenges do you face when you give interviews. So I got a lot of realistic expectation from those points. I have the data points and then I included those data points to answer that case study. So if your case study is something where you can have the liberty or mileage to have collect the data points, try to create studies or try to create as many as relevant data and put it into that case study because it just shows that your approach is pretty much from the data perspective because data is everything. You cannot say anything or everything unless you have a proven data for it or you have the right sources that validates that data. And then what is your result what after that action plan that you have taken? So whenever you're approaching a case study, just implement this method: problem statement, action plan, and then results that you think that would come out of this action plan, and try to put all the pros and cons of this action plan so that once this case study is given, it could also be compared with the other case studies and see who has the better pros.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have another question. How do you put forward your career break to the interviewer?
So, Jitika, it depends on your career break is of maternity break, or you were just not working because you wanted to do some business in between. For certain roles, I think for junior roles, it doesn't really put a lot of impression for us, but for senior roles, it does. If your career break is too long, and it depends what you were doing in that career break. If it doesn't look relevant to us, that would not be a good impression to put. But if it was a mat leave, or because you got married or some other factors depending on different situations, if you have a valid reasons, that would be understandable. But if you went because I've seen a lot of cases where people start doing their own things, probably freelance work, So for certain roles, we definitely do not want those people, because a lot of access to data would also be given. And then if people have done this before, there are high chances they would do in the future as well. So we definitely don't want to take that risk. So you have not put a specific point as to what your career break was. I'm just assuming, but it depends on how you answer that question and whether that looks satisfactory to the interviewer. But if it is unrelevant reason, that might not put a great impression, to be honest. So just plan your career breaks. If you have, if you take any a decision, just try to think what would be the outcomes of that decision if you don't get successful.
Great, thanks. Thanks for answering that. So with this, we come to the end of the
Yeah,
session. And thank you so much. Uh, thank you so much, Nitin. Uh,
absolutely.
and it was really great to have you here. We have learned a lot from you and looking forward to more such collaborations. Um, and I guess people here have more questions to ask. So we'll share our Discord link with you guys, and we'll share it with Nitin, you too. You can join that community, our community on Discord. You can get the access of it, and you can ask your questions over there. So, thank you so much, everybody who have joined this session, and we have some further steps for you. You guys can just register on Uplers, and you can get access to apply to a lot of jobs available there. And we host such kind of sessions frequently, so we'll keep you updated. And you can join our WhatsApp group also, where we keep on updating about our upcoming sessions. So stay tuned for updates, and we eagerly anticipate hosting more sessions and reconnecting with you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day ahead. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you. Yeah, we'll share the recording with you guys for sure after the session. Thank you.
Thanks, Divya. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.